Welcome to Triple Zeros. I'm Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Follow the pod at 30spod on Facebook and Twitter. That's 30spod, the number 30 and pod. Also, follow on Facebook, Clocker Sports, and Twitter, Clocker Sports. Website, clockersports.com. Email address, clockersports@gmail.com. Super Wild Card Weekend in the NFL. 6 games, 12 teams. Some of those teams didn't belong to be there, but we'll get to that in due time. We got to talk about the teams that earned their right to be there, and starting off, the first game was a doozy right off the bat. You had the Buffalo Bills taking on the Indianapolis Colts, a game that the Bills won 27-24. Don't be fooled, though. This game wasn't as close as it appears with the final score, and also could have been a lot closer had the Colts actually prepared themselves to play. You had several miscues, time management, just poor execution by the Colts that really made it feel like they let this one get away. But don't snooze on the fact that Josh Allen came to ball. Him and Stephon Diggs ate that defense up routinely. It was bad. It was bad. And to be honest with you, I don't know what made me pick the Colts in the first one. I do know. I know exactly what it was. It was just it's Buffalo. It was the Colts' defense had been stout throughout the year, and especially in the passing game. And Buffalo couldn't run. I figured that the dependence on Allen to create things in the passing game and with his legs would be the downfall of the Bills. And at least for 1 week, it proves to not be the case, as you just have to wonder. Now, the Colts, after the game, Frank Reich was talking about he fully expects to have Phillip Rivers back. It doesn't foresee any changes coming in that regard. But, of course, there's speculation given the fact that there were times when Rivers didn't look great, even in this game. But I think overall in the season, he gave them some stability at the position. And if nothing else, he buys them another year if they would like to bring in another prospect. Rivers, 27-46 in this game, 58% completion, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Wasn't spectacular, but he didn't turn the ball over. And I think that was the biggest question the biggest reason I gave, the biggest way that I saw the Colts finding a path to victory was by him avoiding turnovers and them really limiting his exposure. Jonathan Taylor was not able to necessarily get untracked like he had the previous week when he had 253 yards, only got 78 on 21 carries. So really what you just saw was the Colts kind of going back into their shell after their offensive explosion a week ago, and Rivers 46 attempts, 309 yards. Like, that's just not what you want. But he threw 2 touchdowns, no picks. There was nothing they could do. The Bills were up 17-10 going into the fourth, and then 14 points in the fourth quarter from the Colts brought this one a little bit closer, but the Bills were just kind of cruising at that point, so it didn't really turn into much. Like I said, Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, man. Josh Allen in this game, 2 touchdowns, 324, and it really was Stephon Diggs with the big game. 6 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown. Man is balling, best receiver in the league, top in, I think it was catches, yards, and touchdowns. Might not be touchdowns, but he definitely was out here hooping this season. Good to see it. Called it one of my favorite trades in the offseason, and glad to see it actually come out and bear the fruit that everybody thought it would. Both teams, it worked out for both teams because the Vikings got Justin Jefferson out of it, and the kid's a stud, so it ain't like they came up short in this deal at all. Bills get their first playoff win since 1995. Colts go back to the drawing board. Congratulations, Bill fans. I saw a tweet come after this game. Saw a tweet come out after this game that said that there's not a foldable table safe in Western New York after that game. Not a single one. And if you know about Buffalo Bills fans, they're out there suplexing through tables, flaming tables, and all types of stuff, jumping off the bus onto the table, off the Winnebago onto the table. They get a little rowdy, and I'm sure that they will be very rowdy going into their game next week. They will be taking on, I believe, the Baltimore Ravens, if I'm not mistaken with that. You got the Rams losing several players in this game, coming into the game without their starter, Jared Goff, who actually ended up playing, but he came up off the bench. John Wolford got the start and was doing damage to the Seattle Seahawks. And look, I don't know how else to put it at this point. The Rams are the superior team. Like, it's kind of clear. I figured the Rams would win based on the fact that they've beaten them, the Seahawks, that is, several times in Russell Wilson's career. They're the only team that he has a losing record against. I just didn't know if Goff would be healthy enough. He came in and did enough to get the W. More importantly, though, And something that we're going to talk about at length here is Russell Wilson and his fade. Now, before I get to that, I do want to talk about what Goff did in this game. I don't want to sell him short. 9 of 19, 47% completion, 155 yards, and a touchdown. Okay? That just lets you know exactly what was going on and what the Seahawks were up against a Jared Goff who had a thumb he just had surgery on a couple days beforehand, about a week or so beforehand, on his throwing hand. Came in and beat Russell Wilson, who himself, 40% completion, 2 touchdowns and a pick, 5 sacks, as he was harassed all day. Leonard Floyd, Aaron Donald, oh my God. It was a rough game for Russell Wilson. I understand that. But I think this was the reason behind not wanting to let Russ cook. We saw them trying to kind of change that philosophy down the stretch. But it kind of was on his shoulders, and he couldn't, there's not enough there. 77 yards from Chris Carson on the ground. Nothing else of consequence. 50 yards from Russ Wilson. Nothing else from anybody else in the backfield. Carlos Hyde, David Moore got a carry. Letting Russ cook has not worked out for these Seahawks. They struggled to get any offense going for most of the night. And you wondered if there was going to ever be a chance where they could just break the game open and just kind of start clicking and things would start flowing. DK Metcalf was put into the clamps by Jalen Ramsey, who made it a habit this season and in his career, but especially this season. Metcalf finished this game 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, I know you might think that, oh, well, he came out with 96 and 2 touchdowns. Garbage time and not on dude. Jalen had him in the clamps and was frustrated most of the night, had him throwing his helmet to the sideline. So the Rams move on. The Seahawks go back to the drawing board. I think the Seahawks are closer to a rebuild than anybody wants to admit here. I'm not sure what they're going to do. They haven't drafted well in quite some time, at least not consistently. Like, you might get a starter or so every class, but they're not getting the depth, and they're definitely not hitting with the success rate that they were hitting with during the Legion of Boom days. So tough out. But this brings us into focus on the Russell Wilson side and kind of his slide over the end of the year. Something that I talked about episode or so ago, and his MVP votes and how come he never ends up the season with them. Beginning of the season, when Seattle was out here balling, right? They were 5-1. I'm sorry. They were 6-2 over the first 8 games. 71% completion from Wilson, 28 touchdowns, 8 picks. From week 9 on, that's the wrong click. There we go. From week 9 on, Wilson completed 67% of his passes, 2,710 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 10 picks. 28-8 the first 7 weeks of the season, first 6 weeks of the season. I'm sorry, first 8 weeks. I am not getting the math right on this at all, and that number is off then. That's exactly what happened. 66% completion, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks over the last 9 weeks of the season, 9 games of the season for Wilson. So let's try this all over again, shall we? Over the first 8 weeks of the season, Russell Wilson completed 71% of his passes, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Over the final 9 games, Wilson completed 66% of his passes, 14 touchdowns, and 7 picks. You see exactly why his MVP votes fall apart towards the end of the year. This is not a one-time deal. It's kind of a habit with him as he wears down because he's being relied upon so much. And even when the team is balanced, the passing game is really a lot of him creating stuff and making it happen Sandlot style. There's not much scheme advantage to what the Seahawks are trying to do. And so when you're that rudimentary in what you're trying to execute, it's going to rely on the players to take their skill and their talent to elevate everything around them. We're seeing that way down on Russell Wilson every year. We're seeing that a lot of times when he's put in a position to have to make that play, it's not happening like it once was. At the very least, it's not happening like it once was, and I'm starting to wonder if it was ever happening like that at all. But it definitely didn't happen on Sunday, and the Seahawks find themselves now back at the crib. Another extended offseason as they get to watch with the rest of us. So it goes from dangerous to dangerous every single season, or at least it went that way this year, and kind of figure out why his, like I said, those MVP votes, people are always clamoring as to why. Why doesn't Wilson get the respect that he deserves? People got to give Wilson his due. We don't talk about Russell Wilson enough, and I tend to agree with that statement, except for the fact that when you look at it, it just isn't. The numbers aren't there consistently throughout the year. Now, again, he's going to have those games, those big numbers early on because they rely on him so heavy. Maybe that'll change and he'll be able to be more consistent as the year goes on. But when you're relying on one player so heavily, especially one who's already coming into the position undersized, whether you think he's big enough or not, he's very undersized for the position standard. So it's no longer a surprise to me. I think we saw it in full effect this season. I think the next time somebody brings it up next year, we need to point back to this season and talk about how there's just moments when he looks incapable. He looks like a completely different quarterback. I'm not even going to lie. He doesn't look like the same guy at all. The guy who garners those MVP votes, the early MVP votes, weeks 1 through 8 every year. And has people wondering, how did he get left off? How did we forget? Then he makes a few plays and you're like, man, this guy, people are writing him off for MVP, this, that, and that. Well, yeah, because the consistency's not there. That's one of the biggest things that I think has to happen every season and for season awards. And you don't get it. You just don't get it from him. So not exactly what you want to see from your starter, from your stud, but so be it. The Rams, though, war of attrition. Will Aaron Donald play? He hurt himself with like a rib injury. They lost a few more players. They're going to be down to backups if they want to have a chance in this one. They'll be playing the Green Bay Packers. Devontae Adams matching up against Jalen Ramsey. They'll see how that goes because nobody's been able to lock up Adams yet. Nobody's been able to break free of Ramsey yet. So that's a great matchup to keep an eye on too. We'll talk about that a little bit more on Friday's episode rather. The Bucs beat the Washington football team. In the notes, I have that they beat up on the Washington football team, and that wasn't really the case. They won, and they won handily. It wasn't really a difficult matchup. 31-23, it was the final score in this one. But it wasn't a battle, right? The Bucs jumped out to a really early lead, 18-7. At halftime, really weird score. They got their weird ways, missed point afters, failed 2-point conversions. So whatever, they got to 18 points to 7 at halftime. And then the Washington football team had a 16-point second half, kind of a rally, except for they let the Bucs score 13 in the fourth. That kind of let Taylor Heinicke of the football team shine. Heinicke finished this game with 306 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, but he had several long runs, finished 46 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Several scrambles that just showed off his athleticism. He looked like a guy who played with great poise in a situation where he was fully unprepared. They thought it was going to be Alex Smith as a starter. Heinicke came in, journeyman, been around the league, backed up Cam Newton 1 year, was in Houston, I believe, played in the XFL, wasn't even a starter in the XFL, and he came in the playoff game and showed out big time. So hats off to him. Bucs, Brady, 381, 2 touchdowns. Nothing to see here. Like this was not a game that really stood out in any way, shape, or form. Mike Evans, 6 for 119. I think the biggest takeaway for me here was just that what does the football team do at quarterback? They've already cut Dwayne Haskins. Do you let Heinicke go? Do you bring him back? Did you do enough? Like I said, this was pretty cut and dry in terms of who was going to win it. Football team made it interesting. Don't get me wrong. But you just knew that they weren't going to make a comeback, especially once the Bucs got those last touchdowns. That kind of yeah. Anyway, Heinicke's future, I think, is the biggest storyline to come out of this. He played well enough to earn a spot on somebody's team roster in training camp next season. Will he get it? Will he be able to parlay that into opening day roster spot? And do we see Taylor Heinicke making some noise in the regular season next year? I think all that is possible, but we're going to have to see him land in the right situation, and maybe he's already there in Washington, where they clearly need a quarterback, and they might have just found one on accident, just by happenstance. Meanwhile, my Bears can't find one to save their lives. We'll talk about them in just a moment. Before we get to them, though, we have to talk about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens getting their his first playoff victory since entering the league, and kind of quieting some of those naysayers in the process, saying that he couldn't overcome and adapt. This is a Tennessee Titans team, and I picked the Titans to win this game based off their beating of the Ravens 30-24 in the regular season. I was wrong. Lamar Jackson decided to find his groove and definitely took it to another level, ascended, as it were, against this team to the level of quarterbacks that I think, people say that you can win with guys, you can win because guys, and you can lose or whatever. We're talking about the win side. You can win with guys and you can win because of guys. He went from a guy in the playoffs who I think always thought you could win with him, but things had to go perfectly. I think now he at least in this game, he showed a way that you can win because of him. He can figure it out. He's showing the ability to figure out things that were beating him before. So that's a level of progression. 179 yards passing for him. No touchdowns, 1 pick. 136 yards on the ground, though, in a touchdown. Like, he was getting busy. And, again, he had a 48-yard touchdown run that kind of broke this game open. And I think that was the one that kind of it was 10-10. Made it 10-10 at that point in time. And then they scored again, J.K. Dobbins' 4-yard rush. So, they were down. Baltimore was down. Like I was saying, and that run kind of broke it open and brought him back. And Lamar elevated his game to another level that I think quieted the people, such as myself, coming in this game. Again, I'm a huge Lamar fan. If you remember, I was driving the Lamar Jackson MVP train all last season right onto a trophy, by the way. So doubting him wasn't a matter of thinking that he couldn't. It just, I hadn't seen it. I had seen it from Tennessee. And, of course, Tennessee goes and proves me wrong. The one time I put my faith in them, I had been doubting them for so long. Finally put faith in them. They hold Derrick Henry, the Ravens do, to 40 yards on 18 carries. Yuck. They hold Ryan Tannehill to 165 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. I think we saw what we all kind of suspected the entire time, that if Tannehill doesn't have the perfect circumstances himself and the running game is thrown off track, that he is basically a non-factor because it just wasn't there. There were times when he made plays, but you just never felt like he had quite enough juice to get, especially once Lamar hit that touchdown to tie it up, that 48-yard run. That kind of, to me, signaled the turn, and it felt that way. They talked about neither team being built to come back. Clearly, the Ravens had a slightly better advantage in that area, took advantage of it, or rather exploited it, and got the W. Good for them. Good for Lamar. The Titans, man, you have a predicament here. I think you're capped. I think we've seen you're capped. You reached the AFC Championship game last season. I think that was it. And I think you made a mistake doubling down on Tannehill. That doesn't prohibit you from going to get another quarterback younger through the draft. But I don't know if I would have hitched my wagon to Tannehill thinking that I had solved anything, given the entirety of his career prior to that one season with you, where he, again, has a stud of a running back. Somebody was going to figure it out, and it was going to be on him. The Ravens figured it out, and it was on Tannehill, and they couldn't do anything about it. That's how it goes. Speaking of that's how it goes, Saints marched all over my Chicago Bears. The final score 21-9 is a lie. It was 21-3. The Bears scored a last-second touchdown in which Jimmy Graham, former Saint and Green Bay Packer, but former Saint is what we care about here, ran off the field right into the tunnel. One of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, and it perfectly encapsulated the Bears' season. Graham's touchdown in garbage time comes in, leads to it's very much akin to the Bears backing their way into the playoffs thanks to the Rams beating the Cardinals. The Bears won 3 games in a row against lower-level teams just to lose to the Green Bay Packers in the final game of the season. And I mean get thumped 16-35 in a game that the Packers really didn't have much to play for, aside from, obviously, New Orleans trying to take that top seed away. But the fact of the matter is the Bears lost to the Saints earlier in the year, 23-6. They lost to the Saints last year. They haven't beaten the Saints since 2008. They hadn't won in the Superdome since 2005. The odds were against them, okay? However, this game was 7-3 at the half, and should have been 10-7 had Javon Wims made the concentrated and caught a pass that was 100 times easier than the one he had made just a play or so before. Yet the Bears found a way to not score anything till the final frame. Third quarter was all of their old woes popped back up. Struggling to run the ball. David Montgomery, 12 carries, 31 yards. Mitch Trubisky was inaccurate. 19-29, 199 yards, a touchdown, and a sack. Three carries for 10 yards. The carries bothered me the most. There was a run, and it escapes me what quarter. I have to go back and find it. But at one point, Mitch Trubisky was running, and it was fourth down, and he could have gotten the first if he'd have just went for it, and he clearly made a business decision to duck out of bounds. Two things about that play. One, damn it, you got to go for the first down. There's no point in running out of bounds if you're going to kick the ball away. There's absolutely 0 point. Two, I have no problem with Mitchell Trubisky running out of bounds in that play if I'm Mitchell Trubisky, because you're not wanted in this city. The city doesn't want you here anymore. You probably don't want to be here anymore. Even though he said it's become home, and he said the right things. He always has. Fact of the matter is, he's ready to go as much as the city is ready to have him gone. 3 points at halftime. The offense was balling, and I knew it was a problem when we read a couple of weeks ago heard from Adam Schefter, or from Ian Rappaport rather, that it was Matt Nagy getting more involved with the game plan and play calling again after Bill Lazor had taken over. Now, I don't think that Matt Nagy had ever completely given up the reins, but Bill Lazor was, specifically cited as being the one who's going to be taking over play calling. They had success. Nagy gets more involved. They start going back to the crap way they were before. Like, this is a direct correlation here. There's no guesswork needed. You can see it. You can see it. The game felt like a Nagy game. Tentative. Very tight. It felt like a very Matt Nagy game. Play calling was very elementary, very basic stuff. Meanwhile, after the first half, the Saints decided to start have a party. And it really wasn't that bad. They gave up 21 points. The Bears gave up 21 points to an offense that ranked 5th in scoring this season and 12th in yards. Defense played well. We could talk about Pagano and how they gave up 14 points in the second half. Blah, blah, blah. I don't care. 21 points to the New Orleans Saints, who looked off for most of the game. Because the pass, I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even know what's happening. It made no sense. To watch this game is so frustrating, and it felt like the Tampa game, like the Indianapolis game. It felt like the Packer game for a while there. Like, there's moments in these games where they're in it and they can't make anything happen, and you just know that the levee's going to break soon, and then it does, and then they're looking on the sidelines stupefied. And, of course, you have moves being made around the league that we'll get to in a moment, and the Bears stand pat. There's plenty of time to make it happen, but if they were going to make it happen, I would think it was going to happen already. It's not. Doesn't look good. Saints will go on to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady versus Breeze. We finally get it. I wanted it last year in the Super Bowl. Didn't happen. Maybe we'll see the fireworks. Hopefully we'll see the fireworks. These are two really good defenses, but two even better quarterbacks that are loaded with weapons, and a really, really good matchup for the divisional round. Not going to lie. The Cleveland Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers for the second time in 2 weeks. Cleveland, though, this time beat a Steelers team that had its entire starting lineup out there after beating a bunch of backups in Week 17. Baker Mayfield, 61% of his passes completed, 263 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Steelers' vaunted defense, 48-37 this game. And I'm talking about from jump, it was a Steelers crap show. The snap went over Ben's head, recovered in the end zone. The Browns had 28 points in the Cleveland Browns scored 28 points in the first quarter. So, I mean, if you think about it, the fact that they only scored 48 for the game is kind of a disappointment. Ben Roethlisberger looked done for most of the game, rather. 68 attempts, 501 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. during the broadcast, you could hear him being commended for his 4-touchdown performance, 500-yard performance on 68 attempts, 4 picks. Like, come on, fam. Let's call it what we see in here. This dude needs to, it's done. It's done. We see it often, but this is a player who's holding on too long because the offense, Mike Tomlin admitted, can't do some of the things that they would like to do because of Ben's limited mobility and what he's able to do. They're not even able to support him with a good running game. Get that fixed, and maybe that'll help some. 30-something yards, 40-something yards, 50 yards total between Benny Snell and James Conner. Some of those Snell yards came in garbage time. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing, Pittsburgh? You got to talk about a collapse. I sat up in here and gave you guys so much props for going 11-0, and then you just shit the bed like this on the way out the door. Holy crap. Should have seen it come when you lost to Washington, man. That foreshadowing. Call that foreshadowing. Pittsburgh is in line for a rebuild while the Browns are looking like they're a problem. They're not going to beat Kansas City, but it's going to be interesting for about a quarter, maybe even 2. That running game and defense is going to be a problem, so we'll see what happens. The Eagles reportedly fired Doug Pederson. Pederson met with owner Jeffrey Lurie. They talked about it. Pederson had one view for the way the organization would run, the franchise would run next season. Lurie apparently had another one. Pederson also says that he was tired of people telling him what to do. Reports are that Lurie was coming down and saying who was going to be active on game day. I have never heard of such a situation. I'm sure it exists, but I have never heard of such a situation where management is telling coaches who's going to be playing in a game. That seems completely ass backwards, and honestly, I don't blame Pederson for wanting out. Also, though, this means that Carson Wentz likely stays. The interesting part about that is Jalen Hurts is still there, and that's going to be, talk about awkward. Now, you can say that Pederson didn't foster an environment that supported Wentz's mental, whatever. The fact of the matter is, Wentz has now been shaken by 2 backup quarterbacks, and the second one, Hurts, is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I just don't understand exactly what it is that the Eagles are trying to do here. This is clearly an ownership decision. And Wentz is the guy with the big money deal, and you probably can't move him anyway. But this is just a crap storm. They just won Pederson won them their first Super Bowl 3 years ago. He accomplished something that Andy Reid could not do in Philadelphia, and he got shown the door because he didn't want the general manager butting his nose into the day-to-day. Like, that's an insane way to show appreciation for a guy, like I said, who brought you your first ship. Crazy. Other rumors, Deshaun Watson reportedly is offering a trade to the Texans, trying to present one to the Texans, where he goes to Miami in exchange for Tua Tagovailoa and the 3rd overall pick. And I saw this presented where the Dolphins could pick Tua Tagovailoa and Heisman winner Devontae Smith, who had a hell of a game against the Ohio State Buckeyes on Monday night's national championship game. So I get Miami wanting to do it. Get Watson down there, you get a proven quarterback. Houston, I get Houston wanting to do it. I'm not sure if Miami, I don't know. This kind of seems like a weird deal. Like, Miami, I think, is in a better position. I don't know if you necessarily want to give up anything for Watson, because then you have less to add to your team that clearly has holes. You already have Tua there. If you like a quarterback, you take him. I mean, I do love Watson, though, as a player. This is an entry. He wants to go to Miami. This is a weird one. I don't know how to feel about that trade. I mean, Tua and Devontae Smith in Houston that's gold. Watson still has no weapons. It makes no sense for Miami. Makes sense, but not enough to pull the trigger on the deal. How about that? Yeah, that feels best. Oh, man, if only the Bears could figure out what to do with that front office and listen to some of the fan base around here. We'll see what turns out of that. Switching gears over to the NBA, John Collins is reportedly unhappy with Trae Young running the team. The Atlanta Hawks started off 4-1, ended up losing 3 straight games. Part of that was Collins voicing his displeasure with Young's holding of the ball, dribbling out the shot clock and then taking shots early in the shot clock, not getting teammates involved. He cited himself, but mentioned that the ball should move a little bit more. Something that I've noticed not in the same sense, but something that I've noticed with the Bulls without Lauri Markkanen on the floor, how the ball was a little bit better. Something we'll talk about another time. Collins' voices, especially in the locker room. Young reportedly very loudly, very proudly, not, aggressive, but, strongly disagreed with him. Young has been known to voice his opinions, but then here's the part that bothers me. The next game, Young came out, scored a career-low 7 points, and took 9 total shots. Look, bro, you want to disagree with somebody about how you doing what you're doing is not hurting the team, you can't then come out there and act like a baby and only take 9 shots. Like, I get it. You didn't appreciate him coming for your wig all publicly. He probably should have pulled you aside. But don't pout. Don't pout. Collins was having a good game that game. Tried to go and talk to Young. Young seemed disinterested. He's pouting. Quit pouting. You want to be the face of the franchise? Take some criticism. Hey, if you don't approve of it, he came at you publicly, come right back at him publicly and tell him why you disagree and why it has to be this way or why you feel it should be this way. But don't come out and take 9 shots and score 7 points. Also, he's like 1 for, I want to say, 17, 1 for 16 in his past 17 3-point shots, including 0 for his last 8. You might want to figure that out before you go around pouting, bro. That's not good. Now, they'll get it together, but damn. Collins said that Young is still his brother. I'm sure they're good off the court. That's just not a good look from your leader. I know Collins is voicing his taking his grief to the media, but damn, man, that's not the way you want to go about it either. I feel like that's a poor showing by a player who, again, is supposed to be the face of the franchise. COVID left the 76ers with only 8 players. That resulted in them having their game pushed back. You also saw the NBA push back the Celtics and the Bulls on Monday, as well as the Pels and the Mavs game. These games were made 4 games total being pushed back this season. The opener between the Rockets and the Thunder was obviously postponed, but then you also had Sunday's game between the Celtics and the Heat because the Heat didn't have the minimum of 8 players to play the game. Sixers also have COVID issues, and that's why they're all messed up. Like, it's a problem. This is not going well, and what's baffled me the most about it is the fact that the NBA has opted to go without a bubble. Now, I heard rumors that the NBA players are not interested in doing a bubble this time around, but I still feel like after seeing how well it worked in terms of getting the season completed, to not go with any type of protocols at all this time around just seems like F it. Like, that's real strong Leroy Jenkins energy after, again, being one of the leagues to show how it can and should be done going into a season battling COVID. So who knows what happens of it when they get made up, but that's not good. Not good. You're having the breakouts. Not good. Again, with no plan in place to see how to handle any of it. And then I'm going to leave you with this one. Kyrie Irving reportedly off the grid. Since the incident in the Capitol last Wednesday, Irving has not been in contact with the team. He is off the grid. And the funny thing about this is it sounds like such an incomplete story to tell and bring to air, except for the fact that that's all there is to it. When asked why he wouldn't play, say didn't want to, personal reasons, and is just gone. MIA. Look, I stumped for what Brooklyn did, bringing in these Kevin Durant and Irving. I am a big believer in them. I said that they would come out the East. They've gone 1-2 without him, and need him back, and especially if they want to win a championship. And I just can't defend him going and dipping. When asked about Irving's absence, Steve Kerr repeatedly has said he's not sure. When he knows, people will know. But this is a bizarre situation. I know we think of Kyrie as a weird kind of mercurial player. I've called him such several times. I still can't get over how odd of a situation this is because I just don't think I've ever seen a player flat out disappear on his team. Dennis Rodman back in the day, right? But that was like championship runs. And the thing about Dennis is Dennis showed back up when it mattered. Like when you needed him, Dennis was there. Kyrie just not there. Weird. It's weird. It's wild. I hope he figures it out, man, because they got a really strong group. I think him and Kevin Durant are a strong duo that can make some noise in the East. But they got to do it together. He's got to show back up if they're going to make it happen. This is not a good look. Not a good look. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit up the podcast at 30spod on Facebook and Twitter. And also check out Clocker Sports at Clocker Sports on Twitter, clockersports.com, the website. And email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Read the stuff. Last Word on Pro Football just released today that the Chicago Bears' final reckoning will come this offseason, where they have to come to terms with the fact that they're not doing enough to make this franchise a competitor. And then tomorrow should be for for Pippen Ain't Easy, rather. Get it together. For Pippen Ain't Easy, tomorrow should be the first Bulls stock watch of the season, where I give you players. It's going to be usually 2 players in each category, risers and fallers, who's doing well, who's doing bad. I already do the numbers that count for the Pippen Ain't Easy, so this is my other one to supplement. Just kind of take a gauge of where the year is gone. And this one is headed by Patrick Williams, the rookie who has shut me up in short order and has drawn praise from the league's top stars. And when I say the top stars, I mean top. So be sure to be on the lookout for that article tomorrow or sometime on Tuesday from PippinAintEasy.com. Until the very next time, though, you already know what it is, man. That is the sound of the horns. I'm gone.